the European Convention on Human Rights. If you've followed news over the last few years, you'll know that this is one of the hot topics of British politics right now, and this week it found its way back into the limelight. On the right in particular, the debate is raging about whether Britain should remain a member of that ECHR. Its critics argue that it stops governments dealing with some pretty crucial issues, things like terrorism, small boats crossings, and criminality. Its critics like Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick and Dominic Cummings insist that we need to leave the ECHR in order to deal with these problems. This week, we'll look at what the ECHR actually is, where it came from, and what some of the criticisms are over 70 years on from its creation. Welcome to History Counts. I make videos pretty much every week looking at how issues in the news have histories that go back a long way. If that sounds like it's something for you, then please do subscribe. The ECHR was created in the aftermath of the Second World War. Europe had endured 6 years of brutal warfare and untold horrors. Governments across the continent were determined that their citizens would be protected from atrocities like the Holocaust. The United Kingdom was actually one of the key negotiators and drafters of the convention. One of its biggest champions, in fact, its original proposer, was Winston Churchill. The ECHR was heavily influenced by British legal values. The United Kingdom signed up to the convention in 1951, and for the first time, human rights were enshrined in the law. It covers protections from slavery, killing and torture, whilst also asserting freedom of speech, religion, assembly, privacy and more. Alongside the convention, a new court was established in Strasbourg, France, the European Court of Human Rights. Cases could be brought to the court by those who felt that nations who'd signed up to the deal were falling short of it. 46 countries are members today. In 1998, Tony Blair's Human Rights Act enshrined the convention in domestic law, meaning that cases could be heard in domestic courts. Since the convention came into effect in 1953, some really high-profile UK cases have been heard in the court that have had a big impact on society. Freedom of expression for the press was defended in a case brought by the Sunday Times in 1979. Another case decriminalised homosexuality in Northern Ireland. Phone hacking was made illegal because of a case brought to the ECHR. But generally speaking, the United Kingdom has had a pretty strong record of compliance with the convention. In 2023, the UK was found to have violated it just once out of over 1,000 rulings from the court. So what is the controversy all about? Well, when human rights interacts with politically sensitive issues like terrorism and migration, it does cause tension. There have also been cases where some believe the court has ruled on issues that should be left to the British Parliament to decide. For example, in 2005, the court ruled that the UK was in violation of human rights because it didn't allow prisoners to vote in elections. In 2012, the court blocked the deportation of Abu Qatada, who'd been found guilty of terrorism offences. Most recently, and perhaps most contentiously, the court was an obstacle to the last Tory government getting their flagship Rwanda deportation scheme off the ground. In June 2022, the court issued an injunction that stopped that government from sending an asylum seeker to the African country. Later, the British Domestic Supreme Court also ruled against the Rwanda policy, so there's still a huge amount of debate about how much impact the ECHR actually had on whether that policy was successful. Either way, since then, the movement within the Conservative and Reform parties in particular to remove the UK from the ECHR has only grown. The only other country to have left the ECHR since its foundation was Russia, which was kicked out in 2022 after it invaded Ukraine. Advocates argue that leaving the ECHR is vital. They say that it was written for a different age. More people than ever before are moving around the globe, and terrorism is a far greater threat. They say it protects criminals, undermines national sovereignty, and fails to serve the citizens of the countries that signed the deal. Those who want to remain in the ECHR point out that it's baked into the Good Friday Agreement, the deal that ended the troubles in Northern Ireland, something nobody wants to go back to. They also think it would undermine the already quite uneasy relationship between the UK and the EU, parts of which are governed by the ECHR. On top of that, they're worried that leaving the ECHR would make Britain an international pariah, joining Russia as the only country in Europe outside of the convention. This debate will rage on. In fact, it looks set to intensify. More and more people are moving over to the view of Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick that we have to leave the ECHR, both in the UK and across Europe, where countries are grappling with the problem of illegal migration. The fundamental question, leave or remain, sounds pretty familiar. Perhaps the ECHR is about to become the new Brexit of British politics. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Each week I try to make a video that explains some of the history behind the things that you're seeing in the news. I'm still really new to YouTube, so please do subscribe and please do leave your feedback in the comments below. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to watch.